this is Chad with Drawn and Cornered. Today we're going to be talking about a couple of items that have become paramount for both candidates in this election right now for 2020. First off, Hunter Biden's emails are still a problem. They are still not being answered by the Joe Biden campaign or Joe Biden himself. They're essentially just trying to deny this completely. The media is doing a great job of kind of tamping down any sort of interest that there is in this story. On Thursday, Trump invited Bobulinski, one of Hunter Biden's previous associates, who came forward and said not only does he have evidence towards the involvement of Joe Biden and the Biden family generally in a lot of these foreign dealings that they had, but was going to continue to vouch for the fact that he knows Joe Biden was personally involved in these relations because he was a first party in those negotiations. This is an issue. Now, the reveal of the emails and the things that have accompanied this associate's story haven't really panned out the way that you'd want them to, in the sense that the story hasn't grown legs further with the media. But the allegations are still there, and they're still relevant, and they're still important, and still need investigation further, or at least confrontation when it comes to asking Joe Biden what's actually going on here. Like, this needs to be explained away. It cannot just be ignored anymore. We've gone beyond that point. So I'm curious how the campaign thinks they're just going to avoid this, unless it is just purely relying on the media avoiding it. And right now that seems to be working. The issue is going to be that the American public is hearing more and more about this and is going to be more and more interested in whether or not Joe Biden has some sort of official dealings. Again, having no response to this is the worst response you can have to this. They're moving instead to coronavirus. Joe Biden has put all his chips into the coronavirus bucket, hoping that that's going to be enough to push him over the top. Now, the issue is that a lot of this is mythology and inaccurate, what they're hammering Trump with. If you go back to March, late March, Dr. Birx came forward with the assistance of Dr. Fauci and talked about what the projections were for best case and worst case scenario when it came to coronavirus. They were talking about 1.2 to 1.7 million deaths if they did everything wrong with coronavirus, and 200,000 deaths if they did everything right. Now, if you know our current totals sitting right around 225,000, that's pretty close to where we were going if everything was done perfectly. So the problem becomes that the notion that somehow 225,000 deaths could have been completely avoided, the way that Joe Biden has said that Donald Trump is responsible for every one of those deaths, is completely false. There's nothing even remotely close to saying that that's accurate, yet he's not being hammered for it. And this is where the media really enters into this story becoming a major, major problem. That you'll remember the Atlantic story about Donald Trump saying that veterans were losers and he couldn't understand why they were doing this. Zero sources on that came forward and said that it was true. Not a single one. They were all unidentified. They were all covert sources. There was nothing that could be followed up on by any other news agency other than the Atlantic just vouching for these people saying, yeah, that's what we heard. There's far more involved in the Hunter Biden story, and yet blackout. There's no coverage on it whatsoever. There's no conversations about it. Everybody in the Trump campaign, everybody in the Trump administration was asked about Trump's language in that Atlantic article that was completely unverifiable. Yet questions were asked, and nobody is asking that of Biden. Same thing here when it comes to the coronavirus. Nobody is asking the question of Biden, why do you think all of those deaths are responsibility of Donald Trump? How could he have possibly avoided all of those deaths? And knowing those projections initially, what do you think that number is that he is responsible for, and why do you keep saying that if you believe that he's responsible for all those deaths? That's a problem. The last thing, and probably not a great sign, but at least gives us an idea of where we're at, is in Australia, in Victoria County, they had lockdown for 3 straight months, and probably the strictest lockdowns of anywhere in the world, and are still noticing a spike in coronavirus. Mark Meadows was hit over the weekend for saying that we are no longer going to try and control this virus. We're going to have to learn how to live with it. We're going to have to learn how to deal with this virus in our lives instead of trying to control it, and he was hammered for it. Victoria County in Australia would tell you that that's exactly the way that we're going to have to progress forward. We are not going to be able to limit this. We are not going to be able to contain it and control it. It's going to be a part of our lives. We have to learn how to best deal with it. Anything other than that is a complete fabrication and a lie. Joe Biden saying that he's going to contain this virus, he's going to defeat the virus, is incorrect. There's no scientific evidence that's going to be possible. There's no scientific evidence that says that that's going to be the way to deal with this. Thank you for watching Drawn and Cornered. Thank you for listening to Drawn and Cornered. If you want to get in touch with me, drawnandcornered@gmail.com, or you can leave a comment below. Subscribe to the podcast, subscribe to YouTube. Thank you very much for listening, and we will talk to you again tomorrow.